It's 6:30 and time to start the Charter Revision Commission meeting, public hearing for June 6, 2022. We all rise, please, for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, starting on the left.
Matthew Reagan, present.
Connie Hadfield, present.
Virginia St. Pietro. June Gagné.
Linda Stardens.
Tom Sinkowitz. Trav Harmon.
And absent Karen can't make it. I don't know about Roz. I'd like to open up the public hearing, the Charter Revision 2022. Anyone would like to speak? Mr. Cunningham?
Just in response to the attorney, I asked the attorney some questions based on what you had discussed so far. He is looking at the items 25B, 25D, 41E, 41F. And then we get to the one that is listed with all the different boards and commissions changing from 6 years to 4. I will read off his opinion. In short, he said it can't be done that way as a single question. The problem will be if the voter may vote against it for disagreeing on one of those changes. So you're packaging something together and they say, you know, we were thinking we would like to keep the Board of Finance in 6 years. They might vote against it, and that's the entire line. So there's a downfall to that. So that's what he was concerned with.
Mr. Cunningham?
Yes.
In other words, that cannot be put on the ballot separate?
You could put it separate, because that we have to vote for each and every one of those, which is
You have to ask one individually.
Yeah. If you had, let's say, 8 or more questions, now, that could be voted on other than waiting for a major election, am I right?
yeah.
Okay.
So basically, the only way that realistically, if we could do it, would be to like pick one particular commission and put the question for just applying to that one commission or one
You could do that. The concern here is that you have 7. You
Yeah.
listed 7,
Yeah,
all lumped under one question.
Right.
yes.
That would be a concern. So that's what he was concerned with there. The other thing which I think was, I asked him about the, if you're talking about the appointed boards and commissions, talking about adding in conservation and agriculture. So that's catch-22, because sometimes, so there's 2 competing viewpoints. One is that by adding a commission, it's a good idea because you want to be, it's more difficult to repeal that commission. And the other viewpoint is that it's not a good idea because then sometimes it's hard to take them and repeal them off, because you have to go through that process. So it is kind of a catch-22. You have to wait for the next charter revision. If you say, oh, you know what, we changed our mind, we're going to take them all off, or take a couple off, or whatever it is. It's a good way to look at it. I mean, there are some different viewpoints to it, so that's why you need to at least explain it that way.
Was there a verbiage recommendation for how the question would be asked regarding the town clerk and tax collector question would be?
I showed him each of those things, so he hasn't gotten any negative comment as of yet, so we've actually wrapped it up.
Okay.
I have a letter from Carla that I'd like to read into the record regarding this issue. Good evening. This is from Carla Desjardins. Good evening. I am writing this in opposition to changing board and commission terms from 6 years to 4 years. As points of consideration, I offer the following 4 points. Number 1, as a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission for almost 17 years, I can attest that it takes time to learn the applicable laws and regulations to be an effective member. The longer terms allow the member the time to develop the skills, knowledge, and experience to be an effective member. Also, the longer terms allow a rotation of no more than 2 members up for election every 2 years, so that there is always the majority of board members with the experience to keep the board functioning within the appropriate laws and procedures. This protects the town from risk and liability that a lack of knowledge could expose. Also, experienced members are able to give historical context of regulations and past practice, as well as mentor new members or proper procedures. Number 2, as the chair of the Democratic Town Committee, I am responsible for recruiting volunteers to run for office. I can say confidently that it is not the length of term that discourages people from running, but rather the process of campaigning that does. It is reassuring to candidates when I am able to tell them that they will only have to campaign every 6 years if they must campaign every 4 years. Number 3, as a member of a former Charter Revision Commission, I would caution against changing one part of the charter when it impacts other parts of the charter. For example, if you change the term length of boards and commissions, then you must also change the rotation of board members for the charter to be consistent. I would point to the most recent change of Board of Finance from 6 to 7 members as an example of how a single change can necessitate additional changes to the charter. And 4, lastly, I would point to the long-term service and tenure of current board and commission members as proof positive that the longer term encourages service to the town. There may be some that would point to resignations as a reason to shorten terms. However, I would argue that there are more members serving full terms than those that are resigning. It is for these reasons that I am opposed to changing the terms from 6 to 4 years. I would suggest that keeping the 6-year terms is in the best interest of consistency and continuity. Thank you for your time and consideration of these items. Carla Desjardins, Planning and Zoning Chair. I want to read that too. I don't know. I tend to not want this also. I voted against it. Yeah, and I'm not sure exactly how to proceed from now. This is our draft report.
Well, this is just a public hearing.
Yeah, this is,
So
we're
we're not taking any action.
Okay, thank you. That's what I needed to know. All right, any more offer from the public? Yes, Ed.
I'm public.
Oh, yes,
You're in
go
trouble.
ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Public.
You're in trouble.
Nothing? All right, nothing, okay.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry, Trent. I'm sorry.
So I'm going to speak as not a member of this commission, but as public, as a citizen. I really do want the tenure, and with all due respect to Carla, I disagree. I understand we're fellow Democrats, but I don't have to be perfect to be who I am. Point is, there's a town next, just 2 towns over, that has a really bad board. And I have 5 friends who are directly impacted by people who they can't get them out. They're in for a long term. One of my friends was on that board, and not on the board, but she spoke, and she was completely ignored. And right now, everyone that I've been telling them is to get involved, get them out. They absolutely are just absolutely beside themselves because they cannot get change. And the problem is that it's very hard to get them out. Certain rules have been put in place. Point is this. With all due respect to people who understand the status quo, it's time for change. Things are changing. Our population in this town is not rising as fast as we think it is. The population of the United States isn't increasing as fast as we think it is. And I do not, except for the young miss over there, I don't see anyone of any significant youth in this room at any given time. So I understand that, we like it, we accept it. I don't see that, what's the point of serving 6 years if people don't see a value in it? I do want to see them get in. And will they make mistakes? Absolutely. It's called figuring it out. You know, are we at 18 just figure out lifelong knowledge? No. I think 4 years is great. Will you figure it out by then? Absolutely not. Will you make mistakes? Absolutely. Will you learn to correct them? Absolutely. And that's how I take it. And I understand that, you know, sometimes it takes a rotation or 2 or 3. And if you've learned and you've adapted and you've learned from those who came before you, absolutely, you should be elected again. And that's my comment.
Anyone else? Oh, Roz.
Now, you're referring to one out of how many towns in the state of Connecticut?
Just one, a
Okay,
few towns over.
okay. That's one.
Yep.
I'm sorry, oh, that's ahead of
It was
them.
Connie.
Oh, no, let her finish.
Okay. For public, and no, you don't see youth here. I don't see any old folks here either. I said for public audience. Except one, I'm sorry. I sat on the Board of Education, and I sat with a very, very, very influential Board of Education. And I saw how the superintendent led, because it was like, well, you really don't know the statutes, you really don't know this, and you really don't know that. Okay. That's where I'm coming from now. And I agree with Colin. If I have to run every 4 years, I'm not going to. It's a lot of work, and it's a lot of money. And that's where I'm coming from.
Okay, Connie.
Young man, I agree with you 100%. This campaigning, I have been in this town for 50-some odd years. And people who are running other than the selectmen, I really haven't seen anybody campaigning. Or maybe somebody once in a while came to my door, you know, to open the door and say, here, I'm running. But to me, if you want to run for 6 years, you run for 4, run again. That'll make you 8. But I think that 4 years is enough if you have someone who does not have the ability to do it. And we have had people like that in this town. Unfortunately, we have. And they've been there for a long time, and nothing has been done. That's my opinion.
Yes.
I agree with that statement as far as those who make the most presence during elections tend to be the top of the ticket in different parties. I can vouch for Virginia and Roz, having worked with both of them before. They are very active, no question that the two of them are so active. Regardless if they might not have been running for the top of the ticket, they've been running for Board of Finance, Planning and Zoning, they're out there doing it. But, that's Virginia and Roz, which is, of course, in our entire population, that's a very small percentage, along with myself and the rest of us who run for office. The truth is, and Carla knows this, because I know I've talked to her about it, is that the most active people, which is only like maybe a dozen of us, are the same ones who do the door knocking and the campaigning every time. And I think this is pretty common in other parties and other town committees too. It's not the entire committee, meaning it's not the entire slate of all the names on it that are all out there having to quote unquote run every 4 years or run every 6 years, whatever it may be. They're not out there running. What the reality is, it's the active door knockers and people making the calls and the people who are at the top of the ticket. They're the ones out there actually doing it for them. Essentially, they're carrying them, helping carry them on the slate. We do not have, and again, I can speak for the Democratic Party, we do not have an active presence from all of ours. And it's kind of annoying because it's like everybody should pull their weight when it comes to having to run for office. Even if you're just planning as an alternate on the Board of Finance or on Planning and Zoning, you should be carrying your weight just like the first selectman candidate, just like, Board of Selectmen. But there's a reality, which is so many of them do not campaign every 6 years. It's almost like some of them just get kept on, or they assume that, well, I've attended the meetings and they got me on last time, so they'll probably do it the same this time, which, again, not the ideal mentality that should be out there, but I know that that's how some people think, unfortunately, because I've had to chase after these volunteers to find out, when are you going to be active on the campaign. I also agree with, some of the remarks that Trav made. The only reason why I'm going to change my thoughts on this as far as trying to move this change forward from 6 to 4 is because of the opinion from the town attorney, because of how, this would apply to so many different boards and how it would have to be broken up. That we can't do it as we had originally planned. If we could, I would definitely still be for moving it forward, but then imagining how many spots that takes up on the ballot of having to change it in all the boards and commissions, that's a lot of space. And obviously I can think of other things I believe we would agree with that should take priority over that. So I am certainly keeping the town attorney's opinion in mind, but as far as the reasoning of why I was originally for it, I still stand with, if it's possible in the future, I think we really should consider going from 6 to 4.
As a point of order, just want to say we do have a meeting after this. I think that this discussion amongst the board members would probably be better suited for
Yeah, that's what
following meetings.
I was leaning towards, so we'll come back in a few. Because I'm going to look for a motion to close the public hearing now.
Unless there's no further input from the public.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And now I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion, meeting is adjourned. 6:47. Oh, that's right. All right. Immediately following after, we have another meeting. I'd like to call this charter revision meeting to order for June 6, 2022. With a call to order and roll call. Starting with Les.
Still present.
Bonnie Hatfield.
Virginia San Pietro, Russia,
June Gagnon.
Linda Charles.
Tom Sinkowitz. Trev Harmon.
I'd like to do that because sometimes you don't know. You don't know who's here. People don't know their names, They might. Has everyone had a chance to look at the minutes from May 31st, 2022?
Yeah.
I'll move we accept the minutes.
Okay, now.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Yes, please. Thank you.
So I guess we can resume our conversation on the final draft report, because I did want to say something. Somebody was next, though, Roz.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm thinking maybe we should just change one commission and see how it flows.
If I was to,
I wanted to say something.
I'll yield to the chair.
I see the need here is not so much, the need that we have is not so much that we have to change the years on the commissions. We've got to work, there's only a handful of people that seem interested in leading the town and learning how to do it. And I don't want to lose anybody, The future belongs to those who show up. And you guys are showing up. Trav, everybody's showing up to these meetings, Lynn. So it means something to us. We need to get other people interested. That's how I feel. And I try to encourage people when they come, or try to get them to come, or even watch the videos so they know what's going on and don't feel intimidated. So I think that's the huge need that we have right now. Not so much whether we change any of the years on the commission right now. I don't see it as a necessary thing at this point.
I want to tell you, from my experience with other clubs that I have been a member of,
Right.
the young people are very, very difficult to get to become involved in anything.
Right.
And I know my own children, they're not young, but they're young enough. When you tell them 6 years, 6 years, excuse me,
But they don't understand the rest of it. That was my point. They need to know why any years? Why do you commit at all? Why do you have an election? You go to that trouble to run for something, to prove yourself, sell yourself, and then you still have to learn. You have to learn the job. So no matter what you do, if they're interested and they'll but you have to encourage them to come and learn. Somebody asked me, how do I get involved in politics? Well, start going to the meetings and see what's going on first. So they have to have the interest.
But it's also important too that, we do need to put more information out there about how to get involved and how to express interest. And that's always a way, certainly, of improvement. But no matter how much we can do, and I know, we make an effort to try to get participation in public hearings, the budget process, town meetings, et cetera, et cetera. But no matter what, some, especially of a younger generation, are not necessarily ever going to have the same amount of interest and amount of commitment as some of us here. We are clearly, and again, people in the room here, we're clearly some very dedicated volunteers in this town, and we can try to persuade, we can try to persuade the younger people to want to get involved, but it doesn't mean that no matter how much information we toss at them to understand the election, to why you have to run for office, it doesn't mean it's going to still, speak for their commitment level. Their commitment level could be a lot shorter than what we are. They might want to be able to do 2 years or 4 years of something and be able to say, you know what, I think I made a difference in that small amount of time. And not have to necessarily resign to say, in order to close that, door and go on to a new one, I have to resign because I was, put in there for 6 years and I'm not going to be able to finish up. Resignation is always a possibility, but it doesn't necessarily have to be.
Well, it looks like the charter also made provisions for people that needed to drop out or quit or move, or, at least there are provisions for people that don't have to stay 6 years. I think it needs more research, a little more understanding. If it was really going to be worth it, put it on the ballot. Even one would be, I don't know. I don't know how far, we've already submitted this draft, right? This is something that we,
Voting on it tonight.
oh, this is the final vote.
Right,
That
so-
was just our.
Essentially, we could take that one off
Yeah.
if we wanted.
So I need to take a vote.
I would just weigh in for the vote. And I think Carla, in her letter, did mention some perfectly valid concerns, and obviously speaking from a chair position of both a political party and a town board. I'm not sure that I put the same amount of stock into the time to learn the position argument requiring 6 years, given the breadth of knowledge out there that no one person is going to be able to master in any amount of time. To me, when you're evaluating the length of a political term, it's more accurately measured in accountability to the public, and it's also how adept you are at learning the position. I take that, and it's with all due respect to everybody who runs for re-election to positions. I find it a little offsetting that if you were to look over an 18-year period, there could be someone who only had to face election 3 times. Even if they're doing a great job, I see no reason why that person couldn't have won an additional election in that same amount of time, given the machinations of the political parties that are active in putting out their agendas and putting out platforms for their candidates and their respective parties. And I think that it is a valid headwind against younger families in the town when looking at what the commitment's going to be, because even though there is the opportunity to resign, if someone is serious enough to be taking up the mantle of public service, or at least putting themselves out there in public to run for a seat and all the vulnerabilities that come with that, then we have to assume that the person also acknowledges that a resignation is not necessarily the desirable or honorable way out in their mind. You don't want it to have to come to a resignation. I'm sure if we were to ask the great history of any politician on any level, being able to leave at the expiration of a term is always preferable to a resignation. My own personal opinion to that extent would also be that when there is a resignation involved, you're deferring to a political party then to make an appointment on behalf of the people. And that seat, in my opinion, belongs to the people and not the political party, regardless of what party it is whose candidate won that seat. If there is a resignation, then it is implied the duties could not be executed, therefore it should default to the people to reappoint that seat. If we can shorten the scope of time associated with that, I think that would be preferable. Those are my thoughts. But I do appreciate the points raised by Carla, and I'm happy to hear a letter read into the record. I wish that would happen more often.
Yeah. Yes,
I got 2 things. Matt is on point. Because we all have, at this table, including the audience, the disposable time. We have become comfortable in our lives. We know when we come home, relax, do whatever you want. We have the ability to make a choice. 18-year-olds, 20-year-olds, you ask them, what are you going to be in 6 years? We don't freaking know. You're going to dedicate 6 years of your life. You're at 18. It's a third of your life right there, and you don't know what you're going to do. No, I think 4 is a very appropriate number. And that allows them to get a taste. Is this something for me? Do I want to get involved? That town of the 5 friends, 4 of them are alive, and the mother got ashes of my 5th friend. Point is, they are now getting involved because they've realized this is affecting them. And they are having a hard time. Give a lower time. Now, are we going to vote on it tonight? Not likely. But it's got to be brought up eventually because Matt's very right. It's off-putting. 6 years. 6 years is a long time to someone who's young. It's literally, a quadrant of their life.
It's a long
Wow.
time for older people.
It is, but at like 44 for me, I've got at least a good 20, 30 years left, and I can make that choice in my time. But at 4 years, I can understand that. And yes, little things impact younger generation greater than the older. So yes, resignation is considered a death nail.
Well, it was just an option
Yeah.
that we saw in the charter for,
Nobody's, I don't think anybody is saying.
But the point is this: we have the luxury of time. Well, youth don't, and that's what I want to go from 6 to 4. Get them involved, and if they want to get more involved, that's round 2, maybe round 3.
Okay, I'm going to go back to my youth. Okay, now, I'm 75, so we're going back a little bit. When I was in the town of Plainfield, I served on the Board of Education, I served on the Board of Tax Review, I served on all other committees in town, I can't even remember the name of them now. But then I took time off in between these services to bring up 6 children. Served as a member of the Athletic Booster Club, president for 5 years. When I needed a time off, I took another time off. Not that I resigned, absolutely not. I did not resign. But the 6 years I served my 6 years on these boards, commissions. And I can still tell you it takes a long time to get your confidence, to learn, to get the respect of your fellow board members through all of this. So don't sell the youth short. That's all I'm saying.
If I may, and I certainly am in an understanding of the logistical concern brought up by the town attorney to, present it across all of the boards that have 6-year terms. I'll concede that, yes, that's a big switch to make in one school. Would there be interest, perhaps, in choosing one of the boards to put on for a question?
I just don't want to waste the energy on that.
How are you going to pick?
Why don't you poll the boards? Why don't you poll the boards? Send the question out to each.
Well, we're going to have to decide. Let's take a vote on it.
Wait a minute.
Oh, Connie, go
Okay,
ahead.
I had my head ready to go.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Now, I realize that 6 years for you people may not seem a lot. I've served on many committees for many, many years, more than some of you have been here.
Not me.
Well, not you, but some of you, okay. 6 years. If you want to work 6 years, after your 4-year term is over, try again. It's going to take you time to learn the job. I realize that. But now these kids that are coming up and are going to be sitting here 10 years from now realize that what you learned in school, they no longer learn. Civics is not taught in school.
That's what mine is.
They want to get rid of history.
Oh,
They want to do all these things, so these kids are going to be different. You want them sitting here for 6 years? You think about it. What we're going to do now is not going to really affect us you know, we could go home tonight and you never know. But it's going to, but what they're going to do here, they're the ones that are affected. And I believe in the 4 years.
Well, we're going to pass this forward. We're going to have to vote on each one
Okay.
again. We passed it forward as a draft. We have to pass it forward as a, each one.
Madam Chair, and if I may, could we, before the vote, could we just have a quick recap of what the steps forward from here are, following the
Well, now
adoption
it
of the
goes to the board of selectmen.
I can read it to you, right?
Yes, thank you.
Even if only for my own.
That's okay. So you've already had a public hearing tonight. You're also in the midst of your regular commission meeting, which is to complete the final draft. So that's tonight's meeting. After that, the draft is then submitted to the town clerk tomorrow. The town clerk then submits that draft to the board of selectmen. And then the board of selectmen will be meeting on the 27th to discuss the report and set our public hearing, because we have a public hearing to do as well. Public hearing will be on July 11th. We have a special right after that public hearing. We're doing the same thing you'll be doing tonight, which is you will be following that public hearing, voting to approve or reject the amendments. And then those final amendments go to the full board of selectmen, be voted on by the July 18th. At that point, we are still in the process of making sure that all legal documents are okayed by the attorneys, in what format they're going to have questions on, and then when they're changed, what's being put into the charter. So that's the process.
Okay, thank you.
So, again, going back to the town attorney's opinion, my only issue with moving it forward as the wording that we had voted on, the way things were worded at the last meeting, what we wanted to send forward, just specifically on the section 4-1B, 4-1C, and going on about all the boards and commissions. I would have an issue at this point going forward now knowing, with the town attorney's opinion that even if it goes to, Board of Selectmen goes to public hearing, we're not going to be able to move it forward as is, as we had originally voted on it, applying to all those boards and commissions. So, would we want to even send it through the rest of the process, just knowing that, it's just not going to have enough space to break it all down?
In the spirit of irony, I would suggest a motion against something I will concede I'm in favor of. I believe someone would have to make the motion to strike the question from the draft
Okay.
as a question, since you can't make a negative motion
Yeah.
in the sense of adopt mindless. I guess we'd have to strike it from the draft, and then procedurally you could go to adopt the draft with that revision made to it.
Yeah.
So this makes sense. I'm looking for a motion to strike it from the draft.
So moved.
For the record, could we specifically call which one we're striking, just to make
Yeah.
sure?
Yeah, since we all know, sections 4-1B, 4-1C, 4-1D, 4-1H, 4-1I, 4-1J, 4-1K shall the elected terms and positions on the Board of Finance alternates, Board of Education, Planning and Zoning Commission, Planning and Zoning Commission alternates, Zoning Board of Appeals and Zoning Board of Appeals alternates be changed from 6 to 4 years. So I'm looking for a motion to strike that from our draft report. Roz
I'll second.
and Lynn, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 opposed.
Nay.
1, 2, 3.
Motion 3, motion carries.
So that's struck from there. Now, the rest of it, can't we do this as one? Or do you want me to read all of them?
Let's read all of them, just for
Do one
clarity.
at a time?
Yes.
Again? Okay.
Because we all have differing opinions, and,
For clarity's sake.
yeah,
All right,
exactly.
so section 25B, shall the dollar amount of non-budgeted appropriations, or do we want to, we already sent that through as a draft, be updated from $10,000 to $50,000 minimum and from $50,000 to $200,000 maximum before a town meeting is needed. All in favor of keeping this? Oh, yes, I need a motion. See, this is where I get funny.
That's okay.
I need a motion.
I'll take that.
Okay. And a second? On that?
I'll second.
Roz, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Who got it?
Four in favor?
How many? I
Oh,
can't-
four,
I can't
five,
see.
five.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh, wait a minute. I thought, yeah, I thought
Sorry,
it was
Connie.
a voice vote.
You know what, this is such a big table.
I know.
It's
I
hard
got
to...
what, 7?
The microphone's pointed in the wrong direction.
7 and 1. I know you're doing it. Section 25D. Oh, I'm sorry.
Nay.
Nay.
Right. 7 to 1, a motion carries. Section 25D, shall the minimum dollar amount for shared grants be increased from $10,000 to $50,000 before a town meeting is needed? All in favor of keeping this?
Motion.
Oh, I'm sorry, looking for a motion? I'm getting straight yet. I'm looking for a motion to keep this.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, Jenny. Second,
I'll second.
Lynn. All in favor of keeping this? Aye. And opposed?
Nay.
Okay. 7 to 1, motion carries. Did I do it right? Oh.
I'll make a motion that we add to the final draft the question, shall the office of town clerk be changed from elected to an appointed position?
Okay, we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'd like to make a motion that we add the question regarding the office of tax collector being changed from elected to appointed position to the final draft.
Second? Lynn? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Yeah.
Unanimous.
Unanimous. Okay, motion carries. And this goes to, that's it.
Do we need a motion to formally submit the
I
draft?
don't know.
Can I ask a question? Get this right.
Yes, Roger.
Matt, you made the first motion on the
Town clerk.
town clerk too, right?
Correct.
Okay. And the second was,
I second.
then, okay, that's okay. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is there a way, how are they put on the ballot? I would like to see like the town clerk and the tax collector be the first two questions. Is there any way to do that, or is there, it doesn't matter?
Only because they're in numerical order for 2-5,
For the
2-5, and then 4-1, that might be a better way to go. At this point, you only have the 4 questions, so
Yeah, yeah.
plenty of room on the top.
So there's still time to explain these to people too. We have a lot of time.
I've been talking about this all this time. And I think you've got the 4 questions pretty much to a point where you're very comfortable with them. Again, to the suggestion of putting this to the public and giving them the proper information, I would strongly suggest that you videotape each question to be answered by a member of your board. I'm going to ask you to consider that the first 2, with the dollar amounts, be something that maybe Connie might be wanting to speak to, and I think it's the perfect person, only because, Connie, you were one on the very first commission. You know that the dollar values have changed. I think that's something you can speak to very eloquently. The other 2, with whether it be another member, to pick amongst yourselves, would be probably another way to, again, a personal voice explaining why would be very influential to the public, to let them know why you came to this decision. It's not that they don't want to listen to what you have said so far, but when you separate out those questions, you put them on the social media sites and they look at them, they actually get that interaction with what's going on. I think that's a very important point. Whether you do another way, whether you put it in the turnpike buy or something else, that's
Well,
fine.
I have clips from these videos, from these meetings,
Yeah.
and I was gonna work something up with clips of people expressing their opinions on the various topics that we talked about. So hopefully I can do that. I'll be getting in touch with everyone. If I need more, and I probably will, need more, if anybody wants to be, I'll give your email list, and if you have some ideas for the video that you'd like to share, I will be working on it. So, I already started putting the clips together. But it would be good to sell those.
So we need a motion now to send these four for our final draft?
I don't know now. We wrote just been, I think that's
If we did them
it.
separately, it wouldn't hurt to have another, this is our final draft.
Okay, so I'm looking for a
So
motion.
I move to send the four questions to the final draft.
I second that.
Okay, Tom, all in favor?
Aye.
And after that, it is time for adjournment. I lost my,
I'll make the motion to adjourn. I'll second it.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Trying to revision and adjourn at 7:12.